Men might be physically stronger, but women are emotionally and mentally stronger. Just for correction there for all you men. Danisha, were you going to say something, my love?
Yeah, just on what Marlene said. Marlene is my mom. So just on what she said, I think she made a really good point about it depends on how you tell them. Because even though there is that little bit of banter, and I think it depends on your child as well. So I think you have to know your child. Some people have a different level of resilience where that banter will turn into something quite negative, and as previous people have said, that becomes an ingrained idea that actually I'm not allowed to be open with my emotions. However, in our house, we have like an open forum. So my parents have always made it that everyone can come to them with their emotions. I have two brothers as well. So the minute somebody looks sad, it's come, let's sit down. What's the matter? So I think that that creating that environment where your child feels able to speak to you about their emotional health, whatever's bothering them, whether it's stress, whatever it is really important, because those children, they become the men. And so what I've seen in my service as well is a lot of people who are in their 40s and 50s, they're coming, and when they're talking about their current mental health problems, they're referring back to their childhood. So I think setting that environment where your child does feel that they are able to speak is really important for their future development and how they grow as an adult. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of what's going on is to do with childhood trauma. You sent me a picture a few weeks ago, actually, Chantel, and I think in the picture, the man and the woman, like in a relationship, and the woman or something like that was saying that her man doesn't show her any emotion, and it was all to do with his mum telling him as a child not to cry, not to speak about things and things like that. So is that what you're saying? A lot of it is coming from childhood trauma.
Yeah. So creating that environment where your child can speak to you is actually really important.
Okay, all right, thank you. Someone else was going to come in a second ago. Anyone? Okay, let's go to the chat, please, Kimani.
Okay.
Say it.
Patrick mentioned that big men or big man in Creole, big man don't cry, so men don't cry. Shelley has asked the question why. Jamaican Empress has added to Patrick's statement by saying that is probably one of the reasons why men are suffering. They said that most of us men are just not in tune to the divine feminine side. Patrick has mentioned in response, the men should be emotionally strong, not crumble under pressure, and that is why God made us the head of the household. So I think this is where we can facilitate a bit of discussion.
All right, thank you. Kevin, you wanted to say something. 1 second, Chantal. Kevin, you wanted to add earlier.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, forgive me. So, yes, a lot of the, I guess, what the discussion was having, yes, it does come back to childhood, I guess in terms of how you were brought up, how your father, or, I guess more so your father, in terms of how he influenced, your sort of, growing. And definitely, I think that my father obviously had an impact on how I was, because as it was, he didn't have a father when he was growing up, or he didn't know his father. He had a stepfather, and the stepfather obviously didn't, sort of treat him in any sort of nice way. And so I think with his sort of upbringing, he then kind of brought it into bringing me up in that sort of way, because he said when he was 17, he was having to work and look after his mother, and this was in London when he was having to do all that. But then when I was in Jamaica and I was still in high school, and he was telling me all this, and he was obviously, I don't know if he was trying to motivate me. But I mean, to sort of say those kind of things to me. I mean, back then because he was born in 1945, so he was 17, probably around 1960, somewhere there, 1962, somewhere there. So a completely different, scenario back then on how he was having to deal with the stresses back then. So for him to then tell me, oh, I should be, trying to, do things for myself but in Jamaica at that time, for me, I mean, it's not like here in England where, like my son Kyle, I mean, he can, go and he can do things without needing me to sort of, direct him, in terms of, he can look after himself, whereas back in Jamaica, I had to depend on my parents so much because I couldn't, like go just take the bus or take the train by myself. I had to depend on them for everything. But I think ultimately, from growing up though, as young, I could always remember, like, if I was crying, like my father would say, "Oh, stop being a sissy," and sort of thing, and so I wasn't able to sort of express myself, and obviously, I think whereas in relationships, yes, it's now caused an issue because if I'm not able to express myself, then the partner won't know what's happening, and so I think ultimately how you speak to your children, how you express yourself to them is going to impact on them immensely, so I guess that's why we've got so much issues going on in this world, because we weren't allowed to express ourselves and to make it known how we are feeling, because we're humans too, humans feel everything. So if we're not expressing ourselves, then we're just kind of just going through life and not sort of showing our true selves. So that's what I wanted to add.
All right, thank you. Chantel, you wanted to add?
So I wanted to add. So I know that we find it as a saying, like to say, "Oh, big men don't cry," but I think it's really easy to be comical about an issue. But the reality of the situation is, let's say, statistics show in 2008, I think it was, about 6,000 people took their own lives, and 3/4 of them were men. So the majority of people that took their own lives in 2018 were men. And when we're looking at Black individuals, the majority of our mental health inpatient wards are filled with Black men, because of this stigma. There's the cultural barrier, there's the lack of understanding. People aren't presenting at primary healthcare services, so your GP, your local charities. And so what's happening is, for some people, it gets to that point where they're in crisis, and so when they're coming in contact with mental health services, it's either through the police or courts, and that's why more Black people are being sectioned and they're being held in hospital. Once you're sectioned, you're going to be experiencing getting more medication. And so that's how the cycle begins, where now you're on medication, you're being sectioned. So I think it is a really serious thing, and breaking down these stigmas, these ideas, is really important, because if we can tackle this within our communities, promote a better understanding, then people are able to go to mental health services and get the help they need when they need it.
Okay, thank you. Kimani, can we go to the chat, please? Thank you.
Okay. Zeze said that men need to find ways to release their stresses and regroup. Brenda quoted the scriptures, so a passage of scripture, the 2 Samuel 3 verse 32, that says, "The king lifted up his voice and wept at Abner's grave, and all the people wept. So for me, men can cry and not be weak. The king is known to be a strong leader, but he cried." And that's just an example of, I guess, men showing emotion. Jamaican Empress asked the question, do you think that men who hide their emotions, such as sadness or grief, are more likely to channel their feelings into different emotions that are seen as socially acceptable? For example, a man who experiences depression might act aggressively or gets angry over small things.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that example.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Can we just put that question out then for you men? Ask the question
Right.
again. Thank you.
Okay, so the question says, do you think that men who hide their emotions, such as sadness or grief, are more likely to channel their feelings into different emotions that are seen as socially acceptable?
Men, that question is for you. Do you think that men who hide their emotions, such as sadness or grief, are more likely to channel their feelings into different emotions that are seen as socially acceptable? The question is for you, men. Our Spade says no. Any of the other men on here? Jimbo says not always. Kelly? Mario, you were going to speak?
No.
Oh, Manny, off you go. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to say like that's true in a way, because if you don't have a healthy way of output of your emotions, the emotions would come out in different ways. So they'll come out in things that's unexpected. So you might just lose your cool, or you might just lose how you behave in certain situations.
Okay, thank you. Any other men on here? Kelly? Kelly? No? Don't want to add? That's fine. Any other men? Okay, the men are shy right now. Let's go back to the chat, please, Kimani.
Okay, Patrick says that it's because some men are too emotional, and that's why we have so many problems in society. Because if Adam had stood up to Eve and wasn't so soft, life would be perfect now. Audrey says that sometimes we have to unlearn behaviors which proved damaging to us. Mario says, I think it must be understood that all these ideas of how men versus women should behave are as a result of stereotypes in the first place. I think A.R. Spades was responding to Jamaican Embassy question. No. Patrick answered no. Jimbo says not always. A.R. Spades says he doesn't tell people about how he feels. Zay says that they do, but he doesn't think that anger is socially acceptable. Rage and anger, violence, maybe that can be expounded upon.
Okay.
I think.
Shane was just saying he'll rejoin.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. So you guys are saying that the emotions are not always turned into something else that's socially accepted. Is that what you're saying? Now, our Spade, you said something, because you have a lot of mouth, you know. You said that you don't tell people nothing about how you feel. Now, what has that resulted in? What has that resulted in? Men, when you don't express your emotions, what happens afterwards? Not expressing your emotions. What happens? This is for the men. Kelly? Jimbo? Kevin, you're just bursting to speak. You're on mute.
Okay, so I guess if men aren't able to express themselves, well, yeah, I guess I don't know, maybe, of course, we don't express ourselves, then we do other things to express ourselves indirectly, and sometimes not to cause attention, but we end up causing attention to ourselves. So I don't know, sometimes I think we not necessarily we are misunderstood. I just think that we are just, we're just put in this sort of light that, you know, men are supposed to be, you know, strong and they're not supposed to have problems, but, you know, we do have a side to us that needs attention, and if it doesn't get looked after, you know, then we end up doing other things which are not, you know, not what we're meant to be doing. So I think it's important we have to look after ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Ask Spades, were you going to speak?
Yeah. With emotion, me personally, I think just getting on with your life, just moving on. Say I have lost. Say I've been through a lot over the last few years, and if I make my mental health take over me, it slows down a lot that I have going on for me. Yeah, in terms of, say I lost my mom 3 years ago. I just never stopped. It is good to have a break and you can moan, but what does that do for you? You lose out. So I can't sit down. I believe I can't sit down and wait for just dwelling on the past. I believe in, all right, it happened, it is what it is, get on with it. It's not a tough exterior. Yes, you have it emotional. I had days that was dark. Yeah, when my mom was sick, I go out every night. Every single night, because I couldn't sit there knowing that my mom is going to die soon. It completely raped, it was doing me. So for me to deal with it, I had to just get on with it. Yeah, it might sound bad. When she passed, I felt much better because she's out. That's stress. But I didn't stop and think, oh, I need to cry now. I need to let this out. I keep going and I keep going. We go for a lot in life, and just to stop and blame it on mental health, I'm not really that type of guy, to be honest. So my emotions, if I have problems and I do need to get it out, I have an iPad where I write a lot in. Yeah, I'm not scared to say I don't write, but I need to come on and tell someone, what is that going to do for me? It's not really going to do nothing for me, to be honest.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Has it impacted not being able to talk about how you feel with your mum passing? Has it impacted your relations, say, with your woman or your children even? Or your siblings or your family members?
It don't impact me. It doesn't at all. Because, as I said, I just feel like it is what it is. And I remember how I get through it. I remember good times. Yeah, you have to remember the good times you have with people you lost. You can't just sit there and just think, yeah, well, she died. You remember the night that you was in there with her. That is gonna play on your mental health. So I remember a lot of good time, and I have a laugh, and I just carry on, and it's like that. And I don't try to remember like the bad moments, which me and my mum had bad moments while she was sick. Because come on. She had stage 4 cancer. I was at 20? I didn't know how to deal with that. So, my dealing with that is going out. I go to work at 9 o'clock, I come in at 3 o'clock. You get what I'm saying? I have the whole day sitting in my, that is just going to do me. So, me, it was just going out. I didn't speak to my friends about it, and my friends kind of respected that I don't speak about it. So they leave it where it, you know what I mean? But I'm not saying they weren't there to comfort, but I just didn't feel like it was something to talk about. I just feel like it happened. And it is a strong exterior, because I had 2 younger brothers. I had to stay strong for them. They can't see me crying. You know what I mean? I had a lot to do. I wasn't even paying bills then. Within the first month, I had to pay all the bills. I become the man of the house now. So if I'm meant to stop and moan about then I'm gonna lose out everything. So I just continued going. If I had an issue, I just write it. I learned how to mentor myself. I would like to say, I pick out issues that I have, and I try to write about it, and then figure out ways how to, overcome that. But that was just me, and it didn't affect me personally. Say I was with somebody and the relationship breakdown because I was dealing with that situation, but then that person weren't helping that situation, if you get what I'm saying. So that person they were there physically, but mentally they weren't. And I just feel like, all right, if you're just gonna badger me and just annoy me every day about dumb stuff, I'm not gonna feel comfortable to sit down and tell you anything. You get what I'm saying? So it's just moving on. I just get on with my life, really. You know what I mean?
All right.
I'm in a good position.
Thank you very much, Aspeds. Mute yourself, please. Right. Is there anyone on the live who's dealt with bereavement similarly? And do you think it's a good way? That's how he coped. That's up to him. But do you believe it's a good way if you've dealt with your bereavement like that? Because he's expressed himself and said he's not had time to mourn, he's just carrying on. So I don't know, is that a good way to mourn? Is there anyone else on the live that's expressed themselves like that?
Yeah, I can say that as well. So I can say that I lost my mum when I was 11. Yeah, and for me that was a hard lick. Yeah, really, really hard look. And I hardly cried. And you know, I kind of had to get on with it. Again, I had this you know, my dad kind of, you know, trying to hold it together. You know, I hardly saw my dad shed any kind of emotion when mum died. Clearly, I could see that he was, you know, the odd time you catch him, and yeah, I mean, he's shedding a tear. But for me, I found it for years. I went through years without actually expressing really how I felt about mum going. You know, I think a lot of it came before me, because I was kind of, even before her passing, I was kind of grieving in that way. And beforehand, you know, so by the time she passed, I kind of got to a stage where I kind of think, right, you know what, I'm just going to crack on with this. But I can tell you, years later, yeah, I've started to realise that deep down inside of me, I was absolutely a wreck. Yeah, because I hadn't really spoken about it with anybody. There wasn't really anybody that I felt that, you know what, I can really open up and say, this is what's on my mind. And I know for a lot of people, yeah, that kind of pent up, kind of unresolved kind of, you know, emotion inside can lead to other things, you know. And I'm just thanking God that I didn't. But I came to a point in my life where I had to start to talk to people about how I feel. I mean, I wouldn't come on a session and something like this, or be in a room with people and start talking about it. I felt that wasn't my thing to do. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Kimani, can we go to the chat, please? Thank you.
Right. So picking up, O'Shane said that he disagrees with Adam. So comment that Patrick made about Adam and Eve. Mario agrees with Audrey in terms of unlearning stereotypes. Felicia says, I don't know about socially acceptable behavior, so that is in response to Jamaican Empress's question. It most inevitably leads to built-up anger and other emotional issues. I, however, know some women who like to talk about needing a soldier, so this further prints the strong black man stigma. Jamaican Empress has another question, a follow-up question. What about emotions that are associated with dominance or strength? When you guys hide your emotions, where does all the feelings go? Is it compensated by acting in a way that is more stereotypically masculine? So that's a question for the men again. So when the emotions are hidden, where do they go? Like, do they just disappear? Like, where do they go? And is it compensated for then by acting in a way that is more stereotypically masculine? So I'm not sure if any guy out there would like to answer that question.
Yeah, you know what, I'm going to jump in and answer that. For me, I think one of the things I found in school is that I found that actually, because I wasn't really able to express myself in a way, what happened for me is that I was very disruptive at school. I was a bully. I was just doing things which was just not right, you know. And I could see, because a lot of that, you know, was down to, you know, I got suspended. I got, you know, I got put out of school for ages. And actually, even on my, you know, when it comes to my studies and all that kind of thing, all of that really suffered. But me as an emotional person, I felt that I took it out on people and other people. You know what I'm saying? I'll be mad to lick down somebody on the road just because, and I don't even know, sometimes I don't even know why I did things. You know, I'll be sitting in the class and I'll just pick up a compass or something like that and just throw it at somebody, you know. And to be honest, even me, I had to think back, why did I do that? You know, why did that emotion come out? And it was all of that, for me personally, I think it was a lot of it was that pent up kind of anguish and loss that I felt. over my mum and stuff like that as well. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Any of the guys want to tell us where your pent-up emotions go? Any others? Going back a second, Patrick said something about if Adam was strong enough mentally, he wouldn't have yielded to Eve, making him eat the apple. Now, men, do you agree or disagree with that statement? Women, you can add too, but men, do you agree or disagree with that statement that you let women rule you? Do you agree with that? Any of you men? Okay, that's fine. Kimani, I'm going to read because I'm going to give you a chance to jump in a minute. Patrick says, women in general always say they want strong men. Imagine a man sit down good and just start cry every minute. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Just start cry every minute. Most women would leave and say they want a real man. And Jamaican Empress is saying, you are missing the point, Patrick. No one is saying you should cry down the place. However, bottling things inside can destroy you. Mario says, cry every minute. Again, sounds like depression. So that needs to be attended to ASAP. If she leaves, she's protecting her mental health. Men will leave a woman who cry every minute too. Now, that's a topic in itself for discussion. Kimani, this is where you can come in, my dear. You haven't spoken. You've just been reading.
Okay. I think we have to ensure that we have statistics to back up what we say. Because by saying most women want a real man or a strong man, that's just probably your own opinion. And again, it depends on how a woman views a man, right? There are women who view men as strong if they're emotionally available. And again, it goes back to this whole thing of how women are raised. Because if a boy is raised not to show emotion, gets into a relationship, and the woman that he's in the relationship with requires that emotional availability, if it's not there, then she's going to leave. So we have to understand where that comes from. In terms of the Adam and Eve thing, that's a discussion for another day, because had that not happened, something else would have happened down the line that would have caused the destruction of man anyways. So I'm going to jump over that question. And in terms of Mario's response, I definitely do agree, because it can be flipped as well. Some men will leave a woman who they think is too emotional or cries too much. So we have to ensure that we have our facts straight. Sometimes we're using our opinion, and we have to ensure that we know where the facts lie. Because I'm sure that there are women on this call who may say, actually, that's not how I feel. I prefer to have, a gentleman who is in touch with his emotions and that kind of thing. Whereas someone may say, they want the strong man, that kind of thing. But I think it's important to understand that pent-up anger, even if it doesn't burst out at some point, it will. So keeping things inside, as Jamaican Empress mentioned, it will destroy you in the long run. It will affect your relationships, not just your romantic relationships, but the way in which you interact with people at work, people on the street. Jimbo mentioned that, his pent-up anger, he was excluded or suspended from school, and there were altercations that he got in. So different people have their breaking point, right? Pressure pot, that whole thing where you keep that emotion inside, it's going to come out at some point, and it's going to be nasty for some people. It may take ages, but you can take so much and no more. That's something that I grew up hearing. So you have to find a way to release your emotions in a way that is healthy. It's important to recognize as well that crying is not the only way in which you show emotion, right? So I know that we've been focusing on crying, but that's not what we're focusing on here. It's being able to manage your emotions, because if you don't manage your emotions, it's going to affect you mentally. So crying is just one way of showing your emotion, and crying doesn't necessarily mean that you're sad. It also means tears of joy. If you're proud of something, if you're happy about something, you cry, tears of joy. So we need to understand that crying doesn't mean that you're weak, and there is strength that you can find in vulnerability as well. So that is my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kelly said most times we don't or can't find someone to confide in because of trust, and that's why some men don't talk about their emotions. Audrey is saying to Jimbo, the very fact that you're here sharing your experience, Jimmy, is the type of forum inclusion which helps us to educate ourselves and each other. So she's saying thank you for that. Felicia is saying, thank you. I was going to say the same thing. You may feel now that not being expressive has not affected you in any way, but years down the line that can hit you like a bullet train from nowhere. The good thing is that you journal things. I think that's our space she's referring to. That's a great way of expressing your emotions. So it's not just crying. Emotions do not always have to be expressed to someone else. The important thing is acknowledging them, and that's very true. You have to acknowledge what you're feeling. Jimmy's agreeing with you, Kelly, that you've made a good point. R Spades agrees with Felicia. Manny's saying it's a loaded question, right. And Kimani Mario is saying thank you for backing them up. And Patrick said thanks too. So we've been talking about what happens when men don't actually express their emotions. We've touched on some of it, but you'll end up men having lack of sleep. You'll have emotional withdrawal, which can hurt your relationships. You may have increased stress. You might feel isolated or frustrated, anxious or depressed. And if these are left untreated and with no one to talk through your feelings with, it can result in suicide. In 2017, nearly 6,000, like Chantal said earlier, nearly 6,000 suicides were recorded in Great Britain alone. And of these, 75% were men. Suicide is the largest cause of death for men under 50. And 40% of men don't talk about their mental health, and this is what the Priory Group has said. 40% of men are not talking about their mental health. Men from the black and minority ethnic group, gay men, veterans, and those from low income backgrounds are likely to die from suicide. So you men on here, you're black. There's a high possibility, they're saying, that black men are likely to die from suicide. Yes, so tell me then, why is suicide so high amongst men? Why is the suicide rate so high amongst men? Why is the suicide rate so high amongst men? Anyone can jump in here. Why? I was hoping someone would be here, but he unfortunately can't be. But somebody help me out. Why is the suicide rate so high amongst men, especially your black men? Sandra, did you want to add? No? Oh, you're on mute, my dear. Let me try and unmute you. 1 second. I can't unmute you. We can't hear you, Sandra. But our space is saying it's because men are too soft. Try and unmute yourself, Sandra.
I'm trying to, my dear.
Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go on.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just taking it in. I think that the suicide rate amongst especially black men, and that is a fact. I hear Kamani say that we should really quote stats, and that is so true. That is a statistical fact that suicide rate amongst black men is quite high. And I can speak for this country anyway. And I think that's probably because of the expectation of a black man. And if they find that they can't meet that expectation, then they feel as if the only thing left for them to do is really for them to take their life. And there's an expectation amongst their family members, there's an expectation amongst the community as a whole, and also how people view black men, the stereotypical view for black men. And if they've actually overcome that stereotypical view, if they then are in a position where they may fall into it, that affects them mentally as well, and psychologically.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sandra. Well, like you said, I'm going to add to what you've said. More men are committing suicide than women for many different reasons. Roles of women have changed over the years, resulting in women getting more jobs and no longer are dependent on men. So the fact that women are getting the jobs and are no longer dependent on men, this has meant that men are no longer needed to provide for their families, and so they develop a loss of identity. Traditionally, men are expected to be tough and not express their emotions, like we've been saying. Men are expected to be tough and not express their emotions and not ask for help, really. For men do not discuss their emotions, they are more likely to have undiagnosed they're likely to have undiagnosed depression. And if they do disclose these emotions, it's that of anger, not having enough money to provide for their families, or stress at work. So they're not really getting to the root of it. They're just saying that they're stressed at work or they don't have enough money. But where did this problem start? And if you go back, some of you, is from your childhood. In addition, men are seeking more to self-treat rather than ask for help. They deal with it themselves. Substance use is 3 times more likely among men than women. Probably caused by the risk-taking testosterone in men. There is a correlation between substance abuse and suicide. Last year in 2019, there were 5,691 suicides in England and Wales, with 4,303 of that being men. The statistics shows that more and more men are not seeking help. They're deciding to end it. And I didn't include it tonight, but one of the ways that men, because men are manly and all of that, they go the hard way. So they'll shoot themselves or they'll hang themselves because it's showing that I'm a man and I'm going out strong. But of that 5,691 suicide, 4,303 were actually men. Now there's a problem. There's a problem there, and that's what we need to solve, the problem. So, men, tell me, why are you not seeking help then before it gets to suicide? I know we've said it's because you're macho, but do you have a point where you say, actually, I need help? Is there a point for you guys where you say, this is getting out of hand now, I need help? Is there a breaking point somewhere? Men or women, if you want to jump in here? Anyone? Kevin's bursting.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Marva, yes.
Oh, right. Okay, I think sometimes they just need to find somebody to speak with. Let me just give you an example. It's an example, it's true fact. My Malachi is 19, as you know, and he had a friend, well, he's got a friend, he's got a friend whose brother killed himself in 2018. They found him in the Thames. The other day, the brother called Malachi, so like I hear Malachi on the phone, about 3 o'clock in the morning, talking, so I take fast and I was listening. Turns out the brother of the child that killed himself in 2018, he too wanted to kill himself. But my boy was like a counsellor, because I listened to him. And he spoke to him until about 6 o'clock in the morning, telling him all the reasons, like why he shouldn't, and I gave him all the reasons why he just want to come on, because I said to him, you can come and speak to Zoji about this, but he doesn't want to. So I'm just saying, just a bit of what he helped the guy mention. And the thing that happened also prior to this was, you know, we done the Reach Out magazine for church. That same young boy had written, I don't know how much you saw the magazine, that same young boy had written a poem called Surrender. And I had to go back to the Reach Out magazine to go and have a read, because in there he was saying something about not wanting to live. But you see, when you read it at the time, you didn't realise that's what he was writing about. And then Christmas, day before yesterday, whenever Christmas was, his mum called Malachi and asked him to come round because she wanted to thank him for saving her son. And this boy, he's only 18, you know, and his brother that died 2 years ago was 19. You know, so I don't know. I think what they just need to do is just talk. And there was a guy, AR, I think that's what the initial came up. He writes, and I think with Malachi's friend, he also writes. He writes a lot of things. And one of the things when I said to Malachi, tell me, why did you want to do this? Because I don't understand it. Because you young people got so much to live for. He said that everything that he's tried to do, he's been knocked back. Just as he wanted to be a footballer because he thought he was good at football, so he got knocked back to the college that he wanted to go into.
1 second. Sandra, mute yourself, please, lovely. Sorry, Marva.
Yeah, so he was, it's all right, Sandra. He was experiencing a lot of knockback, so he felt that life wasn't worth living because anything that he tried to do or go for, he just kept on getting. It's like every time you go for a job, you don't get it. And I suppose, I don't know if young people think that anything that they go for, they're going to get straight away. You know, I don't know. So I suppose, like, whatever he tried to do, he just kept getting knocked back, and I think that done something to him up here, and he felt like what life wasn't left with him. But thank God for my son. You know, he spoke with him, and I do believe that he is on the right path now. And I think that however Malachi counseled him, you know, it's worked, and it will continue to work, and what have you. You know what I mean? That's just my bit that I wanted to put in there.
Okay, thank you, Mother. You mentioned something, and I was speaking to my cousin who's a nurse a few days ago, and she was saying some of it is hereditary, and that I think somewhere in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, that certain families, it's like a generational curse where someone has to kill themselves within that generation. So she was telling me of a family where four of them had died, and the son, who was in his 20s, he decided it was his turn now. So I don't know how true it is, but she was explaining it to me, and I couldn't really get my head around it, but she said it's real somewhere in Ireland. In Kent, there was an article, I think it was on Monday, of a young lad who had killed himself, and it was quite sad because he was depressed, but he didn't talk. So these things are happening. It's happening where people are men especially, are killing themselves, and nothing is being done about it beforehand. And it's not to blame anyone, but we need to find out what we can do beforehand. Kimani, can we go to the chat, please?
Okay. Wait back up. Alright, Zay says that men suffer from mental health and don't even know it, and that's the problem. Most times we suffer subconsciously. Brenda says that I've heard black men say the system is against them. I'd added by saying that alcoholism is a huge thing, which you touched on, substance misuse. The cost is hence the reason why she says that they lead to feeling worthless from early on in school. A.R. Spade says that there's help church. Shelley says that most churches don't take men seriously. Audrey says that our communities need to target reaching out to black men about depression and suicide. Kelly, I think, was in response. I'm not sure what this was in response to what she said, but he said, sorry, that's love. God is love. Your son showed love, and that is what is lacking. Manny says that there is a disease associated with suicide. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Mary says that many stereotypes are upheld by religious entities.
Okay, thank you. Guys, we had been expected to finish at 10 o'clock, but it seems we're overrunning because there's about 2 more questions or 3 we need to get through about the help that's out there. But if you feel you need to go, thank you so much for joining. But I just want to get through this. I apologize sincerely. Now, the question is, everyone else going forward, if you're going to speak, let's cut this down to a minute, please. To say your 2 cents worth, cut it down to a minute. The question is, how can we prevent men suffering in silence? Joan, are you here? This question is directed to you. How can we prevent men suffering in silence? Joan? Are you here? We can hear you.
Yes, Tony, I'm having a little problem. I'm so sorry.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. There's a help for men suffering in silence. Okay, good. First, they need to know they are not alone. A lot of men are suffering, and the suffering in silence it is rarely talked about. Men do not want to say they are depressed or having a breakdown because of the stigma which is associated with mental illness. Men are less likely than women to recognize the problem or to talk about the solution and to seek treatment for depression. What they do most times is to suppress or repress their emotions. And none of these are good. We need to get men to talk about their emotions with a counselor or someone they trust. I know sometimes it's hard to find someone to trust, but there is always somebody there, who you can trust to talk to. And try not to take on the situation by yourself or depression or fall into depression because you know what this will lead to. Okay? The only way to prevent suffering in violence is to just get help all the way. Do not suppress your emotions.
Okay.
Do not suppress your emotions by purposefully avoiding them because you don't know exactly how to deal with situations. Don't suppress. Okay? And do not repress your emotions also by unconsciously avoiding them. Because they will not just go away. Some people suppress or repress and think the situation is going to go away. But it's not. It's hidden right there under the subconscious level. And it will restart. It will come out. It will restart it. And sometimes when you suppress and depress and repress and whatever, it just explodes. And what leads to suicide. Repress something or you repress it. It's going to explode someday, right? While in counseling class, I remember this topic came up where this gentleman, he was nothing bother him, nothing seemed to bother him. And one day he just snapped. He snapped that he killed his wife, that he killed his children, and he killed his own life. Because although he was quiet, he was suffering silently. So this is why and the next thing also is men need to change their mindset. So your men need to change their mindset. Okay? I know that obviously they talk about when children are small and you're not supposed to cry and you're not supposed to show any emotions. You're not supposed so many don't even know how to say I love you. Right? Because they think that something is wrong with saying I love you. Okay, if a tear comes, they think something is wrong and you see them back it away so quickly. Emotions is good. Show your emotions. Okay? Show your emotions. But don't say and do not suffer. Do not suffer in silence. Silence can kill you. You need to find someone to talk to. Find a counselor, right? Find those ones. Church is good help sometimes because I do Christian counseling. So you go to find a counselor or someone, to pray with you, to pray with you or therapy or something like that. Okay? And change the mindset. Because the mind is a powerful tool. So we need to change the mindset.
Okay, thank you for that, Joan.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Aisha, before you go, your question was, what help? Because you're a mental nurse. Guys, for those of you that don't know, Joan is a part-time counselor.
Did you hear me, Sonia?
Yes, we heard you. Thank you. Right. Aisha, John kind of touched on it. So now I just want to ask you, what help is out there to deal with mental health, Aisha?
Okay, I think to start with, it's best to talk about it. Because for you to get any help, you have to talk about it. And it's always good if you have somebody in the family you think you can talk to. So somebody you trust, and when somebody is talking to you about any issues at all, you need to give them that listening ear. Let them talk. Don't be judgmental. Because some people, why they don't talk is by the time they start talking, you're already being like, oh, why? You're a man, you shouldn't, So not to be judgmental. Give them that listening ear and attention. Let them know. Empathize with them. Show that you care about whatever issues they may be going through. So the first one is to talk about it. Then also to speak to the GP, because they'll be able to, direct you or signpost you to the right services you need to. And also there are so many crisis lines that we could access, and some people have different protective factors. For someone like me, my religion is my protective factor. Some people, maybe it's their family. Everybody have different protective factors. So we need to know what is our protective factor so that we can, get some help from there. Then also, like I said earlier, the GP, you need to talk to your GP so that they can signpost you. Then there are crisis lines as well. Then there's some charity organization as well, mainly for men. Then there's Samaritan, there's Rethink Mental Health, there's Mind, then Face It Up Foundation, then there's Man Up Foundation. All these many, they deal with men mental health. Because I know we women, we also have our own mental illness, but the fact that we speak out about it, so help is always readily available. But like somebody said from the chat that, it's easier said than done. I think we need to relearn some things we've learned already. Because most of these things, we already have it in our mind engraved that, nobody will listen to you or nobody will take you serious. I think we need to start saying, you know what, even if anybody will laugh at me, this is my life, I need to get it together. I need this help. Because sometimes, if you don't talk to me, I can't help you. So you need to learn to speak up. Forget the fact that people will laugh at you. People will laugh at you, yes. But however, you're still going to get the help you need. But if you bottle things up, that is what sometimes leads to people committing suicide. But if you just, find somebody you can trust, talk to them. And for us as well, if somebody is trusting us, telling us things, we don't have to start calling around and say, do you know he told me this? No. Because that's one thing people really do. By the time you say it, your story is up there on Facebook, is on status, is on... Please, 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 we need to stop that. If somebody entrusts something in you, please seek for help together. Help them. If you can't help them, don't hard to read. It's either you help them or you just leave them. Please do not hard to whatever they're going through. And lastly, I'm going to say, as parents, I know sometimes all these people in their 30s, 40s, sometimes it's not that easy to change or, whatever they've got. But as new parent now, we need to start telling our kids to speak up. We need to stop telling our boys to stop crying like a girl. We need to stop that. We need to let them express their emotions. Let them feel free to talk to us about anything and everything they are going through. We should encourage them to speak up more, rather than before they open their mouth to speak up, it's just, come on, shut up. You're not a girl. We really, really need to start from home. Because sometimes whatever you teach your kids from home, it will help them in the society. But if you already, ingrain all sort of things in their brain, society is not going to help. Society out there is corrupt. But whatever you do, whatever you teach your kids at home, matters as well. Please, we really, really need to speak up, encourage people that speak up, and please do not people's story on social media. It is their story. You know what? Let them feel free to come to you. Don't stigmatize, don't be judgmental. Please, that's all I've got to say.